it was just like I let everybody push me to like outside of like what I wanted to do, and I
Yeah.
was like, now looking back at it, it's like I just should have put my foot down some more. But I mean, you don't know those things.
94, 94, it is more than 94. This is more than 94. Yeah, this more than 94. 90, more than 94. Yeah.
Welcome you all to another episode of More Than 94, where former athletes redefine success. I'm your host, Nene, and today we have Dr. Gabrielle. She goes by Gabbi Bowie, is a dynamic individual whose journey has combined her roles of college basketball, motherhood, and chiropractic care. As a former college basketball player, Gabby works to intermix her knowledge of athletic performance, physical fitness, and wellness with chiropractic techniques to help others achieve optimal health. During her time as an athlete, she was able to earn both her bachelor's degree in medical anthropology and master's degree in public health before ultimately deciding to join the clinical side of things, earning a doctorate in chiropractic. Now, Dr. Gabby works to bridge the gap between neuromuscular skeletal health and holistic healing. Welcome, Gabby, to the More Than 94 podcast.
Hi.
So I would first introduce like what the podcast is about. It's basically former athletes that went professional in something other than their sport after college. And so just highlighting those stories for individuals, because I feel like a lot of podcasts we hear about are just about like professional athletes and not other people that are actually making a difference and are being great after
Right.
sports. And so
Absolutely.
that's what this podcast is about. And so if you want to just take us through like how sports impacted your life and how it kind of how did you get to where you are right now?
Okay, so I guess a lot of it has to kind of just start like when I started playing basketball. My dad played. All my brothers played. My youngest brother, he's been pretty much like a role model for me. But apparently the word was that I did not want to sweat. So that happened early on. So I was like, okay, why didn't y'all make me play? So fast forward, I really started kind of playing a little bit in seventh grade. Now, seventh grade, my dad was in Korea. And I really kind of did it because I was like, I was feeling a little left out. Like I want to play, do what my brother's doing, go to the gym. So he said, okay, when we get back, that's when we'll kind of get to work. He put concrete on the side of the house. We had a goal, and anytime we wanted to go out there, we just that was the groundwork of it all. Kind of from there, I really just picked it up a lot easier. So teams are kind of feeding in. Hey, I want you to come play with me. I want you to come play with me. We're at this time we're in El Paso, and I'm just learning as much as I can. Fresh out of just trying to learn how to shoot a basketball, but my form was always pretty good. Um, and then, from there, it was just, you know, that's how you build and develop like friendships, different relationships. I think the biggest thing that we all forget about is the networking piece. We always think about networking in like corporate America and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I mean, it kind of starts there because, like you said, a lot of it is where can we're all doing something different now. We don't talk enough about they think they make you feel like you fail if you don't continue to play sport after
Right.
college or
Yeah.
play sport after high school. But in reality, it's like your journey is your journey. So a lot of what that groundwork began was my work ethic, and then from there, I mean, that's definitely transformed into my professional career of like, okay, deciding to get my master's, deciding to get my doctorate. Like, the work ethic part is just something that like that carries you a very long way because you've been through a lot mentally here.
Yeah.
And that was something that I didn't understand, but now looking back, I'm able to look at, I was able to persevere through a lot of things, or I pushed my body to places that I never thought I was able to be, or go to places that people told me I wouldn't be able to go because of the sport.
Right.
And everybody talks about using it as a vehicle. Like, that's the main goal, and I think we lose sight of that a lot.
Yeah, I think you have a good point. Using your sport, not necessarily but basketball in particular, as a vehicle to do other stuff, not just
Mhm.
the end goal. Because again, statistically, like you probably not going to the WNBA. Like that's just
Right.
have to swallow that pill. Not trying to touch nobody's
Right.
dreams, but you got to figure out what you're gonna do next and what you
Mhm.
like to do. I feel like
Mhm.
basketball, probably consumed a lot of our time, and we didn't figure out like what we really truly like to do outside of that. And
And
so,
that was hard.
yeah,
That was something that was real hard for me. Finishing basketball, it was like, okay, what's next? I thought I wanted to. My dad, I mean, I grew up around all brothers. I don't have any sisters. I have a best friend and her sisters. They're my sisters, but
yeah,
otherwise, like, I spend a lot of time like around that men. And so I didn't wear lashes. I didn't have my nails done. And so I thought that's what I wanted to do after I was done. Um, and that kind of wasn't the case. So I was like, okay, I kind of want to go back into playing. Like, this is who I truly am. I had an offer to go to Italy, somewhere in Bologna, and it ended up falling through. And I ended up finding out. So this was like 2019, maybe. And I found out that I was pregnant with my son. And
oh,
so from there, it was like, okay, I'm forced to, do something else. What's next? Because that's gonna be my new job. I still was in the gym. I used to train kids. Like I used to really get in there. Like it didn't matter to me. I was just that's just who I am. I'm really hands on with the stuff that I do. So I mean, I spent a good deal of like my pregnancy like in the gym. So I kind of transitioned to what we were doing. So I was able to kind of intermix that. He was always around it, and he really took an interest into it too. But that was like, okay, that can be my next shift. But then upon deciding that, when I finished my master's, I decided I was going to go back to chiropractic and or go back to school because for a professional degree. Ended up choosing chiropractic, and I was like, okay, I left my son with my parents. He was here, from a couple months old all the way up until he was 3. And for me, I was able to kind of put myself and my parents. My entire family, my brothers, my sister-in-laws, like all of them, they all came together to make that happen. But what
that's
I
good.
was able to do was, I was able to kind of like be on my own a little bit. Like I had that college experience again without
Mm-hmm.
like the athletics or without like the mom part. So I was like, okay, what is it that I like to do? And I did not know still,
Oh,
but called myself trying to come out of retirement, and I ruptured my Achilles. So I was like, okay, and now I'm square one, where do we start?
yeah,
And I healed up pretty fast. 10 weeks, I was straight. 10 weeks I was
yeah,
good, ready to go. I was running. I felt strong, but I never really kind of went back to the basketball scene. So that was, me being forced once again to like, what else am I gonna do outside of basketball? I
yeah,
have to figure it out.
yeah. No, that's good. For the people that don't know, where did you play in college? I don't think you said that.
Um, so I played 2 years at University of Utah,
Okay.
in Salt Lake. So that was the Pac-12 conference, and then I decided to transfer, um, and I finished at Incarnate Word, or University Incarnate Word in San Antonio. So they
Oh, it's
were
a private
south
school.
of the time.
Yeah. What years did you play?
So I was there. So University of Utah was there 2014 to 2016, and
Okay.
then 2016 to 2019 I was at Incarnate Word.
Oh, okay, okay. I'm trying to think. It's off subject a little bit. I think we had a coach that was. Her name was Tanya Ray. I want to say she was at Incarnate Word. I don't know if she was there when you were there.
What was her?
Tanya Ray.
Tangy?
Tanya.
Tanya. No, maybe
Last
no,
name Ray.
no, maybe not with me. We had so the deal with like Incarnate Word, that decision right there was like I had never been on that campus. My dad, he was he did professor of military science there, and he was like, "I'm never gonna go to this school. My kids are never gonna come here." And then they had a coaching change around the time that I was looking to transfer, and I was like, I mean, what better way probably to kind of get me back home. We had just moved from El Paso, to San Antonio, so that was kind of like I'm familiar with it, but it was just like new beginning there.
So, so after, obviously basketball is over, and now let's go back. So, what made you transfer from Utah to come back
Mhm.
home closer?
I really wanted to play more.
Okay. Okay.
That was really a lot of what it was. I think when I first got there, we had one coach, and I felt like I felt like I was overly prepared. Like I came from a really good, AAU background. Like, my dad was on me. Like, I did all the things that I was supposed to do and probably more, but I felt like it was just kind of constantly being, trying to tear me down. And one thing about me, like I'm gonna finish everything that I start. Like, I mean, I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
That's determination. No one was gonna be the one to kick me out, but I stayed. Um, my freshman year, and I remember my dad came out for a game, and it was and I kept feeling like my foot was hurting really really bad. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna just kind of fight through it. But came out the game. I think I played like the first quarter, first half, but I was like hoping I didn't go back in because my foot was hurting that bad. So I was like, okay. Um, my dad ended up taking me to the ER because like no one really on the team was listening to me say that, like, hey, my foot feels like it's broken.
Right.
Go to the ER, and my coach, I wasn't trying to and not to slander anyone, but and I'll always kind of tell things from just straightforward, like how it is. There's no, how nothing to hide, but he cussed me out in the ER, and
Okay.
was like, and so from there I was like, okay, I'm not, I don't really care about me being here. It took them a little bit to take me, to get me taken to like, the sports doctor, and
Yeah.
turns out I had a skull fracture.
Mm.
So ended up having a fifth metatarsal stress fracture. So that little the pinky toe fracture. I
Mm.
was out for 6 weeks, so I missed all of the rest of preseason. And I came back after Stanford and Cal. So kind of after that is like, what do we have? It's not a lot to work with. And in that time, I remember asking one of the assistant coaches, or she was a support staff that was like pretty, very respected there,
Mm.
at Utah, and I was like, "Hey, do you think I can redshirt?" And I really debated on even asking because I was scared. Because I was like, I'm scared. I was scared of the rejection piece. So,
Yeah.
and he was like, "Look, all you can do is ask. I'm sure it'll be fine because like I can't play. I'm missing a lot." And so when I went to ask him, he told me, the head coach, he told me no.
Mm.
So I, essentially missed a year of
Basketball.
basketball, when I came back. So he was fired. We had a new coach come in. And from there, it was like, I felt like it was kind of the same thing, that support staff just again trying to tear you down. And everybody's perception of things, and art can all the way be different depending on, because I always say, like, when I went to my new school, there's a school for everybody, like where
No,
you
for
should
sure.
feel. So if players, other players felt that, maybe that was the case, like, this is at the end of the day, like my perspective.
Yes.
But a lot of times, like, we were, just I felt like it was a lot of degradation and just trying to tear your character down, and that's a lot of what I don't play about, is like my
Right.
character and how people see me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's just how I am. Um, and I just vividly remember just like, the stress of like, and I know it's, at the highest level of what is, I feel like we also, a lot of people don't talk about it enough, is like, I was stressed out about, because I didn't play a whole lot,
Right.
it was way more, and then I got to starve myself to weigh in, and so it was a lot of mind games because I didn't play a whole lot, but I wasn't out of shape. It's
Right.
like, but I still didn't want to weigh too much because I don't want to get in trouble. And I would find myself like, I remember specifically, like I got kicked out of a workout, me and like two other freshmen, and it was really like it took a really big hit on me. But that whole day, like I probably didn't eat for like a couple days, and I remember feeling like I was going to pass out and practice in an individual, but we got kicked out, forced go do more more stuff, more
Yeah. Yeah.
conditioning. I mean, it was a lot of that, like, the mind games of it all. And so from there, they would have probably they told me they would have kept me. But I played through another stress fracture scared because I already didn't play one year.
Right.
But I had another stress fracture that I kind of just kept under the rug, didn't really know about it until I left. And um I waited till the end of it all. They say fake it till you make it. I waited till the end of it all, and I kind of had that conversation. She signed off, so I couldn't play anywhere else in Pac-12, of course.
Right.
And then I kind of like had a list of people that were looking at me, in high school. So I've talked to these people before, had
Yeah.
conversations. I remember giving her that list because she was like, "Oh, if you need anything, let me know."
Right.
Never heard back. So in
Yeah.
that case, like, what could you have said that like I didn't disrespect you? I didn't do anything like that. So
Right.
that to me was just like it hurt, being feeling like you're all on your own when that's supposed to be like a home away from home. Um, and so that was really like that big determining factor of like this is not a place that I need to be.
Yeah.
Um,
So what made you go there in the first place, though? Did you go?
so
Did you?
kind of it was one of my biggest offers. So I
Okay.
was, I had some bigger names. I really was looking at like Western Kentucky. I remember crying. I had to call and tell him I wouldn't go, but and me and my dad, we've talked about it now, but it was really like him pushing me to go to the bigger offer. I
Yeah.
had another AAU teammate. They were looking at her, and then they were like, "Okay, well, we want you too."
Yeah.
Um, and so that was a lot of it. And I was like, "Okay, well, yeah, it is one of my biggest offers." Um, I'll go. But it was really like a lot of my dad kind of pushing me to do that. And that's one thing we said we didn't want to do, like when it was my brother's turn. But we talk about it now. He'll say, yeah, I pushed her to go there, and but I don't regret it. It's just like, your
Yeah.
journey is your journey, and I'm able to tell people about it. But it was really like the influence of others
Yeah. And
because it
so yeah. So that's a
her.
good. I want to like hit on that because I feel like
Yeah,
a lot of kids are in your situation. So that was not my story because different conversations in different households happen. But I feel like sometimes parents also don't know or don't want to be honest with their kids' skill level. Okay. And so then it's just like, and I haven't, and my niece, and I'm just like, listen, we're not picking basketball as our main thing for to go to back
right,
to go for school. I'm trying to, and
right,
I only could say so much. I said
right,
your first priority of picking a school is if they have your major, because you're not going to the WNBA, right? So make sure they have your major, and secondly, make sure you or and secondly, will you play? Will you play?
right.
So it don't even matter about the school because my thing is like I went to Arkansas State. Yeah, I could have went to
Mhm.
Mizzou, but I'm not gonna sit on the bench for 3 years for what?
Right.
I didn't go to the WNBA.
Yeah.
I mean, so I went to a school where I knew I would play,
Right.
like as a freshman, and
Mhm.
so then they had my degree. Obviously, I had an accounting degree, and I'm just like, it's not about the name of the school because at the end of the day, if you're good, you're good. They're gonna come get you. They're gonna come
That's
find
all.
you.
Yeah.
And so a lot of kids don't. But I'm just saying, like, you're not like you weren't the only kid that does like their parents had done that or like, oh, this big school. If
Right.
so, what? It's a big school. It doesn't matter if it's a big school. What you gonna do after
Right.
college? So
Exactly. And you
I
made
think
a perfect point about like the picking the major. Like
pick the major first. If that school has your major, because I've even heard like, oh, why did she go to that school? That school's not because she ain't worried about basketball. Is just a vehicle to get her school paid for. That's
mhm,
it. But
that's it.
most smart girls that are gonna go out there and be like, okay, I'm going to this. So what's a Division II school? But they got the nursing program that I want because I know after basketball, I'm going to go be a nurse. I'm not going to go if I'm not going to unless the opportunity presents itself. Yes, I might go try out basketball or whatever afterwards.
Right.
But at least I'll graduate with a nursing degree and I can always go back and be a nurse or whatever.
Mhm.
And so I think young kids get caught up in the name of a school when at the end of the day, bro, like the
Right.
statistics are low, slow, low.
Yeah. I mean, even to get to college, they're low. So
They're
it's like
low.
we're that in itself is like it can be the accomplishment. And I will definitely say like I originally I said I would never be a doctor of the whole body, and I was like clown because now look at me, I'm a chiropractor. But initially kind of going in, I was like, well, and I let a lot of things in which and that's where, like I said, I learned where I let a lot of outside influences take over like exactly what I did. I said I wanted to be a doctor. I said I wanted to do sports medicine. That's what I wanted to do. But when I got to school, they were like, oh, well, it's going to be really, really hard for you to do it. So naively, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you're probably right. Let me just
Yeah,
knock
yeah,
down to athletic training. And so then coming down into athletic training, I was like, okay, they were like, well, you can't shadow a team and be on a team. But with the athletic training part, they were like, well, you can't shadow a team and be on a team. So I was like, okay, well, I just won't do it then. So then I was kind of just stuck without a
Yeah.
major, but I was like, okay, well, I know I want to be a dentist. Um, so it was just like I let everybody push me to like outside of like what I wanted to do, and I
Yeah.
was like, now looking back at it, it's like I just should have put my foot down some more. But I mean, you don't know those things because I was the first one of us to kind of go to start the process of like what it's like to go to college. So
Right.
now you learn for everybody else after us, but
Yeah.
it was. And then so I decided I was like, okay, decided on medical anthropology, where the dental school there was like, hey, our doctors are really smart, but they just don't know people. So I was like, okay, cool. This is a little smooth fit for me. I can do it non-traditionally. But then going into incarnate word, I was ready to leave Utah so bad. Like I was packed up, ready to go before like the semester was over. I remember my parents flew me out to my brother's tournament in Atlanta. It was like my first fresh breath of fresh air from all that. And
Yeah.
me, my dad, my uncle, we drove up to Utah 20 hours, slept a couple hours. I took a couple of my tests while we were there on Wi-Fi, and we drove right back. Wasted no time. But, it was just like, but with all that being said, like when I was ready to leave, I didn't even take into consideration like a similar major. What am I going to do next? I was just ready to
Right.
go. So I was able to make it work where I really sat down with my advisors. I put my foot down there, but at that point, it was like, oh, you're gonna have to retake this and that, and I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't even, I wouldn't even do that anymore. So I decided to do like my master's in healthcare administration, but I had no background in anything. I was always gone with class. So, I didn't take enough consideration into like
Yeah.
my education. I mean, I'm thankful it all ended up working out in some type of way, but it's like, had I just thought a little bit more about that, like that probably would have changed where I went. But we only know
But
what
you
we
know what
know.
you know, and no, that's good because kids need to hear that. Like, because if not, I mean, it's already a hard transition for people to go from not playing to playing, and it's so many people that I didn't even realize that.
Hmm.
And then also just playing a sport, people don't understand like what all that is. So like when you go play a sport and you play at a high level, like your life is that. So
Hmm. On that.
practice and everybody's experience, like you said, everybody's experience is different. So my coach, he didn't curse or whatever stuff like that, but like I've heard stories of just different things happening and stuff like that. So a lot of people just assume that y'all see us playing out there on the, against the team, but like y'all don't know what happened in the background. And I just try to keep people aware. Like, listen, when you go visit, you have to act like some parents don't know, like you said, because this is their first time ever either going through it, taking their child through it. So like they don't know what questions to ask a coach and
Hmm.
everything. And I tell people, I say, and I try to tell my brother and them, like when you start going on visits, obviously I'll tell y'all what questions to ask because I've gone through that process. And then I had a stepdad that asked great questions that I
Yeah.
didn't even think about. But your child needs to know that she can mesh with those girls on the team.
Hmm.
Coaching staffs make a difference, but I feel like I might not like a coach, but as long as I like my teammates, I think I can get through 4 years of college
Yeah.
basketball. But if I
Yeah.
don't like
That's
my coach nor my teammates, we gonna be
right.
back in that portal, transferring to another school. So I just like I think it's like people need like a one-on-one class when you go on college visits.
Well,
Like,
I
what
think
questions do you ask?
enough parent like it's always the hard questions, and I kind of now understand this being like on the coaching training side of everything. Like my dad never, and he'll tell people now, like, I mean, my dad never let us talk to anybody without him being there until like maybe we've had a couple conversations. Like it was always like, hey, coach, so and so, like I got my dad here, he's gonna, just listen in on the conversation. But
Yeah.
it was that understanding that my parent is involved. And now not everybody liked that because sometimes it's like if you can't even get along with that, then it's like why sometimes it's like you got a little ulterior motive going on under there. Like, if you have an issue with the parents being involved. And I think that's important. Like that parents don't get. And now that I have a son, it's like, and I've been through it. My brothers have been through it at the highest level. Like, we know what to do now and how
Right.
to come across it better. But a lot of parents are like, oh, you can't just leave it in the hand of your kid. Like, I think that the involvement of it all, like people hated how involved my dad was because he was like, he needed to know. And that was just what it is. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a kid and you're an adult, or the coach is an adult.
Right.
And, a lot of times, like, not everybody at the end of the day has your best interest. At the end of the day, it's a business. Now, it's not, and now people can have their, like, a great experience with it. Like you said, coaching staff matters, but it's like that piece of that just being involved and parents being okay with, like, or putting your foot down with how you need to be involved. That is like, that's the piece. And that's the asking the hard question. Me as an adult asking, how are you planning on, like, developing my kid into, like, making sure they get through school, making sure that they develop as a person, as a player, like, I'm giving you my kid.
No, for sure.
um,
It's a both and. It's a both and. So I'll agree a little bit with you, not. So it's a thin line. I feel like it's a thin line. I have this conversation because my brother, I feel like they are helicopter parents. So it's a such thing as that as well.
yeah.
And so as an adult, so yes, you are a kid at 18, but at the same time, you're a young adult, and you're gonna have to be put in the real world sooner or later.
Right.
Yes, your parents should be involved in asking the hard questions to the coaches. Like, yes, is my child gonna be taken care of? Is my child gonna be doing this, that, and the other? But where that hard line that you have to draw is like, he also is a young adult. She also is gonna have to make a decision for themselves, and this is gonna be it, because mom and daddy ain't gonna be walking to class with you every day while you crying in class because you don't want to be here because mom and daddy picked the school for you. And so that's because even when I was going, and you had to be on like when other kids were getting recruited, we had to be like the host or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I noticed the most, what drove me crazy, and they probably would have fell in that category.
Yeah.
Was the parents did too much talking. The kids were not asking questions themselves. And I'm like, bro, you're going to be here. Your mom and dad are not going to be here every day. And if you're not comfortable with being here, being with this teammates or being with this coach, ask the coach hard questions. It's okay to ask them questions. I just don't think people know that they can't do that. Is where I think that goes there. I don't think those kids think they can't ask those questions to those coaches because they're a coach. Like, ask the question to the girl.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's like that thin line of like, okay, you definitely can't cross, that, because that's the end of the day. I didn't always have, like, or know what questions to ask, or you confide in other people, or, instead of I think it's like I said, it's just that it starts at home as well. Just preparing you for those conversations and trusting also that, like, you raised someone good enough to govern themselves as best as
because mom and daddy not gonna be there, and mom and daddy can't wake you up to go to class. You have to do that yourself. Exactly. And that's not the coach. And it's a hard pill to swallow, right? Mm-hmm. Those coaches are there. They're feeding their families, so they're dependent on a bunch of 18 and 19-year-old girls as well. True. For their livelihood. So what make people think that they have your child, they only like your child because they can bounce a ball and put the ball in a hoop? For the most part, I'm not saying all coaches, but that's the gist of it. That's their livelihood. So for people to walk around sometimes and be like, well, they don't have my kids in their best interest. Yes, they do for 4 years, and that's it. After that, like, the next people are coming in. And we gotta be, and not saying that that's great, but that's just the nature of the beat. That's just a part of the job. If I gotta feed my family too, if I'm over here coaching, so I'm gonna go recruit the best. And if you ain't doing what you're supposed to do, guess what? It's a business, right? You're fired. I'm letting you go.
For sure, definitely.
So the scholarships are 1 year. So we're gonna do your evaluations after the year's up. You not meeting my expectations, I'm gonna have to holler at you. Right. And those are the things that people they skim over, I feel like, and don't realize that that's what goes on. It's a business. Yeah. We're playing basketball. It's a game, but it's also a business. And it's more so of a business now with all the other stuff. Back when I played in 07 or 12, it's not nothing like now. It's more of a
Right.
business now. People ain't even playing to win no more. They just playing who got the biggest check, who gonna pay me the most.
Yeah, it's definitely changed for sure.
So it's
It's
not. So
definitely changed.
it's more probably cutthroat than it was than I played. But it's just so many people are unaware of just like, or they forget like these people are they feed their families just
Right.
they're feeding their families with this job, and they gonna get
Right.
fired if you don't win, if you don't perform. You ain't gonna have no coach. You gonna have a new one.
Right.
So it's just looking on both sides. Yes, you always want. Yeah, of course, you want people to have your child's best interest. That's just
Yeah.
you just
But
every
it's also
parent
like,
wants
this
that.
is a job. This is still your job at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
and it's
So
still it's all a business, and
mhm.
even in the real world, when you want to go, if you're not performing, you gonna get fired.
That's all
It's
there is to it. And I think
it's
that's also what's like you said, that's what's lost sight of. And kids. One thing like we never had to worry about was like our work ethic. Like we're gonna come in and do the job. I mean, I may not want to, but I'm gonna do the job
yes,
because that's my job. And so now, like fast forward, I mean, all we ever did was play basketball. We trained, so now fast forward, I've only had like maybe 3 jobs. They've been pretty long term jobs though,
yeah,
since being done with school, or since being done with undergrad. And that was like that's the thing, it was I guess it was more just, I guess, how am I trying to say it? We don't it's that's the part that's the after, like what basketball can teach you.
right.
Like I don't have any. We can cut that part out because I'm trying to decide how I want to word it. Because like I'm trying to say like we're all human too at the end of the day. Like
No, for sure.
just like you're a person in this business, there are people in this business, and I think I try to like tell patients from my perspective now as a provider. It's like I'm a person too. I'm quick to, and I always like, I used to ask, my mentors in school all the time, like, is it okay being too transparent, or like what's too transparent? Because that's how I would want somebody to be with me, especially
Right.
with when we look at like medicine
Yes.
and how we look at, the dynamic of patient doctor. So, I mean, I'll sit up front, like right now at the clinic. Sometimes I'll just, there'll be new patients walking in, and I'll just sit up front with the front desk and just have conversations. And they don't know that I'm the doctor or anything, and they're, we're just having a conversation. But
Yep.
them not knowing that about me, just kind of gives you a little bit more of like, okay, I'm able to talk to you. You're not just like directing the conversation. Um,
Right.
but I always definitely try to remind, same thing with, like I said, basketball. We're all human. So we all have to do what we have to do for ourselves. But it's also like, I'm trying to give you that aspect. And I'm telling patients all the time, the title is doctor, not encyclopedia. So if there's something like, I've never met you before in my life, or even if I did, like if there was an answer for everything, I wouldn't even have a job right now.
Right.
So,
No, it's true.
that's just life. If there's an answer for everything, like we wouldn't have
Yeah.
jobs.
Yeah, because
So
I'm sure being a chiropractor and doc with that title,
mhm.
the assumption is you should know everything. Every question I throw
Right.
at you, you better give me an answer because I'm not.
Right. But meanwhile, they went to Doctor Google and had them telling.
Yes.
I think it's like, this is my going into like my first year of practice. It's kind of crazy to say now because I feel like I've been in school forever. Um, is I just like to tell people like I go to the doctor sometimes. We don't tell the truth, and I'm like, look, we can, if you want me to help you, cool. We gotta have like a kind of understanding, you know. And I try to like level, and I think what the vehicle of what basketball has done for me is I've known I'm able to pretty much make a conversation with about anything. Now I'm a very like to keep to myself, and if I really didn't have to talk, I probably wouldn't, which is
Mhm.
why I kind of like the what I do a lot of the time. I don't have to spend like, I can choose, a lot of what I'm doing, but I've met somebody who's been somewhere, or I've been somewhere that somebody else has known, like just through
Mhm.
travel, or
Yeah.
I've met somebody from Canada. I had some teammates when I was at Utah from Canada, and from there you're able to like really connect with a lot of people. But through that, like, I mean, I probably wouldn't have done that normally, or been able to say like all these things and be able to connect. And so now people are like, I'm able to say, oh, oh, you have oh, you have a basketball shirt on. I actually met one of my patients I found out that she used to ref our games. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, the world is so small, and she wasn't even supposed to come to me that day. But even then, it's just like, it, I feel like sports in general, they pay it forward. And, you are always bound to, like, we had a coach that said that you always know there's 6 degrees to you knowing somebody. So me and knowing maybe like, who I'm trying to think of a good example.
It's like you 6 people away from knowing somebody or something like that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So you're
Like
6 people away from and that's just with connections of like me. I've only been in Texas for real, but like just through that, like with the things that I've done, the people that I've met, like you technically know a lot of people, a lot more people than you think you do,
you
and
do,
that's just
yeah.
sport in general.
Yeah. And so like in chiropractic world, how has you kind of touched on it a little bit, but how any like challenges or struggles in the chiropractic world being a chiropractor is anything from basketball or your like sports background helped you
Does
in
it help?
your professional career?
Um, I definitely think you can't teach. I always say like you can't teach touch. Um,
What does that mean?
and
What's that mean?
so where it's kind of where we have to where you're laying face down on the table, like, we have to basically, it's called palpation, like we're feeling the spine, like what's going on, where you have restrictions and so forth. Now, in with what we do is like, yes, we are, considered doctors, or
Yeah.
like, in the medical field, but also our craft is chiropractic. Like if you can't adjust, you're not going to go very far. So that's what I mean, like, with touch. So I think with like the years that I was training in strength training, I had patients look at me and they're like, some patients would tell me, "Oh, you looked like you're not strong enough to adjust me," or I look
Oh.
too strong, or I'm really really strong. So I kind of get that, but
Oh, okay.
I've also know what it's like to be in the training room a lot, because I spend a lot of time in the training room also. So I kind of had listen, I'm able to listen to stuff, but just being able to like listen to what's going on with the patient, like allowing like your hands to do the talking. And I say that like, with just dexterity with basketball, like, having to use both of your hands, and
Mm,
how your touch has to be like the coordination of it. I think a lot of that is like the
yeah.
touch piece. And then the ability to have a conversation and relate to people, because like
Mhm.
I put my body through a whole lot of stuff. I put it through a lot after school or after college athletics. I have the aspect of motherhood in there.
Yes.
Like I know what it's like for that. I know what the recovery is like, or I have an idea. Don't know what, every specific person is like, but I have an idea. And then now I'm recovering from my second Achilles rupture. So it's like I've had, a lot of that, that coming back from being hurt, like whether it's trying orthotics, like, hey, this is just what I liked personally as an athlete. Like, this is what I used to use. I can
Yeah.
make recommendations. It's not like I'm prescribing, because that's not within my scope, but it's like, these are my recommendations. And a lot of what I try to do is, and I feel like a lot of what basketball is strategy.
Yeah.
And for me, I start off with the patient, and I'm like I said, I'm super transparent. Like
Yeah.
I'm probably too honest, and I'll tell a patient like, look, this is our first time meeting. Like, you don't know me, I don't know you. And we're just we all we can do is, if we love it, we keep it, we hate it, we throw it away, we try something else. Because I can always give, and this can be like, anybody can have a disagreement about how they would choose to practice, but how I always choose to practice is, we're gonna start off with like, okay, this is what I feel like we should do. But if your body's telling me something different, as I'm mapping my way through like what I would call my baseline, like finding out like what movements bother you, telling you like what things connect where, and how the mechanics of it can work
Yeah.
based on like maybe your activities that you're doing. So, but from there, if like, let's say I start off with like a general like rotation of the hip, and I feel restriction, but I'm like, okay, if they feel it in a different place, I'm mapping where their body's going. So
Yeah.
now that's getting the story. But I mean, I'm like I said, I'm always quick to be like, look, this is what we're gonna do. If I don't know you, I'm not the physical therapist that you're trying to make me be right now. I'm not these things, but what we'll do is like we figure it out. But it's
Yeah.
also within my scope. But I've definitely learned to put my foot down a little bit more, which I didn't do in school, but putting my foot down a little bit more of like, okay, you know, this is all I have for us right now.
Right.
Sometimes there's no more answers. Sometimes there are, but the big answer, which we all heard in school, is it depends. And
It
I noticed
depends.
I've noticed that like those types of things are okay to say, or
Yeah.
it's okay to. And I think that's where like I said, it's the strategy piece of how we're gonna make this work. Like I'm here for you, but if you're not gonna be here for you, then I don't know what to tell you because you're a grown adult. You're gonna do what you want to do, but let's think
These
about it.
these are my
Day
suggestions.
ones, how many day ones are we gonna have before we decide that like hey, you're gonna do something about this,
All
and
right.
that's all there is to it. And I think like that's the aspect of what basketball does is like, or just sport in general is just it's here. It's mental, especially when you're doing it for your scholarship, when you're doing it for something that's above you.
Yeah, I think that's good because it does depend. So it just depends. Just like you said, like in basketball, it depends. But what if they do this? It just depends. You read you. I'm gonna read the defense. You tell me, and then it may not look the same every time. So it just depends on what I do. And so that's
Hmm.
just again, it's mental. It's called a little bit of a IQ that you got to have. And
Right.
you just gotta go with it. Go with what they give you. And so that makes a whole lot of sense. So obviously we've gone through, we've heard some of your biggest challenges, in college and Utah State and going through all of that. What are like some, if you look back, or if it's another Gabby going through a similar situation, what would you tell her? What would you do differently, and what kind of advice would you give her, having kind of gone through that same circumstance
Hmm.
that you went through? Would you do anything different? Would you tell her to what are some things that you would tell this?
Um, I feel like so now I'm really now looking back. I've had time to kind of reflect on it, but I'm said is I don't believe that I should like change anything because
Mm-hmm.
that was how I was supposed to go through it.
Okay.
But now having that other perspective is maybe I would have like had a little bit more fight in me to go where I wanted to go originally.
Yeah.
And that kind of changes the whole dynamic of like maybe I would have been happier there. Maybe like, I would have been playing earlier there. Maybe I would have been able to do a lot of more things there. Um
Just
and
basically, you're just saying like, just instead of obviously listening to the outside noise, just pick where I wanted to go based off of X, Y,
yeah,
Z.
it's you because like you mentioned earlier, it's your decision
Yeah.
where you're gonna feel comfortable, where you're gonna mesh with people, where you're gonna do the things that you want to do.
Right.
Um and okay, he's coming. You want what? Jelly. You want peanut butter jelly? No, Joey. Johnny? Joey? Yeah. Okay. Jelly. All right. All right. What was I saying? So, but yeah, just it's always it's your decision. You're the
Mhm.
one that's gonna be the one playing there, going to sleep there, being traveling with these people.
Right.
If
Yeah.
you feel comfortable, that's what you should do. Um, but also understand that there's no right answer. Um, because at the end of the day, like what you're supposed to choose is the one that you chose at the end of the day. Like that stuff is mapped out for us. And
Yeah.
now it's just waiting to kind of unfold. And I always say like, you like what I mentioned before, we do the best that we can with what we have and
Yeah.
what we know. And you have to I didn't give myself enough grace for that early
Mm-hmm.
on.
Yeah.
And so despite like the decisions that I made leading up to this point, like yeah, I could have done a lot of things differently. Maybe spoke up about my injuries or fought for myself, advocated for myself.
Yeah.
Um, because they say you have the ombudsman, but they don't give you a lot of those like those resources. And that was really pushed for us at Utah, but never really stuck around, or maybe I just didn't pay attention to it. Um, but definitely been my biggest advocate for myself, and but
Mm-hmm.
also give myself grace because there's no right decision. How it affects you is how it's going to affect you, and you have to you have to work with what we have. I mean, as it's easier said than done at the end of the day, but
Yeah.
the biggest thing is like I never quit, and I
Yeah.
said that I was gonna finish. I wasn't gonna let anybody kick me out. I was gonna let it be my decision. But along the way, I got to meet some really, really great, amazing people that I'm still friends with now, and that I'm able to just still check in on, or we just keep up with each other. Um, but like, yeah, you have to give yourself grace. You have to forgive yourself for or not, or even like be willing to pat yourself on the back, like for the things that you are doing.
No, you did accomplish it.
I always say, like, I always was joking about how I was gonna say, like, oh, for 2 months everybody had to call me Dr. Gabby, doctor, and then when I got out I was like, maybe not. I'm just a normal person, and but at the end of it all, it's like I had something, I had this idea of what was in my head, and I didn't do it alone. I couldn't have been able to really detach and do the things that I was doing for school so well without my parents like holding it down, my family holding it down for me while I'm in a completely other state trying to, or in city trying to micromanage things from hours away. They did all that, but they'll still turn it back. They're like, well, you made sure his appointments were set. You made sure that, he everything was paid for and so forth. But, looking back, it's just, finish, what you start despite
Yeah, that's
the income,
awesome.
because you never know what's at the end. I always think about
That's
that
tough.
picture of
Yeah.
the coal mining where it's like you're
Yes.
right there. But if you turn around and you give up, then you never know. So
Mm.
right now I feel like I'm, even with me in my life right now, I'm scratching the surface with like finally, I closed the chapter with athletics. Now I closed the chapter with school.
Yeah.
So now I gotta grow up and be an adult. But it's like
Adulting.
all
So yeah,
that just
how is I'm gonna ask you that since about because you had your child, you had your son after school, or what part of the story did you have him?
so I finished so I finished like early 2019, and I think Gray was, so it was right after I was done. Like I said, I was training a little bit to try to go like overseas. So, but then, so he was October, September 2019, so the end of it. So he was done with school, but when I decided, I started a year of my master's on scholarship. Um, and then I decided, because I wanted to go overseas, that I would just transfer to finish online so that way I could continue it. So he was kind of like, but definitely end of basketball for me,
Hmm.
um, towards the end of the year. And that led up into the pandemic. So he was born during the pandemic.
Okay, okay. And so how was that? Not the pandemic, but
Mhm.
like what was your thoughts? Because you wanted to go, overseas, but
Overseas.
now now you're pregnant with a baby, and now you still want
So,
to go to school. And of
right,
course, great that you're because a lot of families wouldn't do that, and so that's
right. Oh,
awesome that you
yeah.
had that support system. But of course,
Yeah.
being a mom, just those emotions of leaving your child,
Oh, yeah.
all that things, all
I
those
can
things.
laugh at it now, and anybody that knows me and sees this, they'll know. Like, so when he was born, I mean, it was just during a weird time. I mean, nobody wanted
Yeah.
to touch nobody. It was just like, it was new, and so that was just in itself kind of scary. Just kind of figuring everything out. But I guess I was just on like kind of autopilot. Like I was blessed to be an overproducer. I was like, I just exclusively pumped, but I was able to like donate milk, and I was just doing I was doing a lot of different things. So when I decided that, I used to work at Arasti, and as a patient advocate, and I used to, for the kids that we trained, like when there was like a training class in, it would be like those types of treatments at a discounted price. So I always like, hey, we would know about it first. I'd be like, hey, let's get you on the schedule, blah, blah, blah. But my mom came back from one, and she was like, have you ever thought about chiropractic? And I was like, no, because I was actually looking into another doctorate program that was like teaching doctors how to be better people. So that's what I was going to look into that from that standpoint. But then when she
Better, like
like,
bedside manner or something like that.
well, or just like,
Because you deal with the nurses at the hospital mostly.
right. But it's, yeah, I guess more from that standpoint, but just like to understand, my background is medical anthropology. So it's like, how can you connect or how can you reach different people with the same goal? Like, you can't go to one type of population the same that you would go to
Oh,
another.
gotcha.
And
I understand.
that's
Okay.
that connecting piece of like,
Okay.
how can we better message? Like, and that, I think that's a lot of what I try to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm able to connect with so many people. Like, I may not know what it's exactly like, but I empathize with you, and or I know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody.
Gotcha.
Um, but when with Gray, I ended up finding him a chiropractor. Um, and she was just amazing at that time, where she provided me a really, really safe space to just be like, ask the questions that I needed to ask as a new parent. I didn't know what I was doing, and
Yeah.
a lot of it was by myself. I did a lot of it by myself. Um, and so from there, I was like, we sat there. He was a couple months old, and from there, we developed a relationship. I decided, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do chiropractic, and I was gonna wait until his first birthday. And my dad was like, why wait? I was like, because it was like either May of 2021 or January. He was like, why wait? Just do it. He's not gonna remember. We got you. It's fine.
They not gonna remember at all.
Okay. So I started. I was still working pretty much full time.
Yeah.
I was, working from home. We were in an RV. I was working from home while we were waiting for the house to be built, and had a couple month old baby, and I was still doing my master's. For a little bit right before I graduated, I was getting him to swim classes. So I had a lot of hats to wear. Um, but I feel like I said, I was on autopilot. So when I left to Dallas, it was right before Gray's birthday in April. So he wasn't even a year old. And I remember, like, they helped me set everything up. We got the apartment going, and it didn't hit me at first until like they left. And I want to say, like, I mean, even like I feel it now, and I try not to get all emotional about it, because like it was, I feel like, that we talk about like postpartum or baby
Mm-hmm.
blues and stuff after. And although I didn't have it really bad, I feel like at first, I feel like it can happen at any time, like
Yeah.
conscious.
No. Anytime in that first year or 2 year.
It,
Yeah.
it hurt so bad, like, so to the point where I was like, I don't even know if I should even be here doing this right now. Like, I could just go home. Like, no one's, forcing me to be here. Um, And he didn't understand. Obviously, he's not even a year old. He doesn't understand. But when they drove
Yeah.
away, I was like, I cried for. I probably cried the entire time I was in school. And my classmates that are now, I consider them like brothers, sisters, family. To
Yeah.
me. But they pulled me through, because like I don't know like how, and which is why I say like I never did this alone.
Right.
Know like in what state I would have been to like I physically, like, I mentally feel like and emotionally blocked it, because now, and just to be honest, I don't really feel like I remember anything before that, because
Yeah.
I like such a traumatizing thing.
Right.
Although the decision, I knew it was something though that I had to do, because I want to be able to give him the life that my parents were able to give me. I'm
Yeah.
disqualified from the military now because I have two bad Achilles, but it's like I wanted to be able to give him that. And so they were always just constantly reminding me, and I'm thankful, because like they pushed me to the finish line. Like we held on where people fall off,
Right.
holding each other together. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're it's always talk about strength in numbers, but we have like a strong group of like Black doctors, that I got to say we crossed the finish line together. Like, we saw a lot of each other. They saw me driving in the middle of the night, finishing a final to drive to get Gray to come right back, or to like visit him in between, or have him up with me to like when I could. And we were like leave him in one of the study rooms, and we would all take turns watching him while we had to go to class. Like, that was the community that
That's
they
awesome.
were able to help build. And I couldn't thank, like, I mean, however it all like turned out, like I could not thank them enough, because I struggled like
Yeah.
mentally, emotionally, and to leave him and to come back. I mean, I had a meeting with his teachers recently. I was like, I don't feel like I want to know him. I want to know what I've been missing for the past year. Like, yeah, I've been paying for him to go here, and I get the reports, I get all this other stuff. I try to ask, but like, I need to know who he is. And that's where like I'm grateful to have, been able to, one, do what I always said I wanted to do, which is be a
Yeah.
doctor. I've been saying that since I was little. I finally got to say that, and now, focusing on, I owe him all of his time back. So that's what's been important to me, like doing all the things that he likes to do, making sure that I'm present, making sure that I have a job that allows me to be present. But yeah, they saw me cry for 3.5 years of like, what am I doing? We're almost done. I'm like, what am I even doing? This is hard. What am I even doing?
No,
uh,
that is tough.
easy right now, but they, I'm just like, I'm grateful. Like I wouldn't have been able to do it without anybody. Like I say, this is our degree. Like we all have this,
We all listen.
yeah,
We
this is
all got it.
our degree. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's good that they, rally behind you and helped you
Mhm.
out. That's I think that's awesome for real. Because a lot of people don't have that support group, or people get
Yeah.
through it. They get through it, but they don't have that kind of experience, and they
Mhm.
just have to figure it out how they can figure it out
Right.
to make it better. And most of the time, like Dad said, he not gonna remember half that stuff. They don't
Yeah.
start remembering stuff.
Yeah.
Not that
And
it's
he
just like, but probably like not
yeah.
till like you like 4 or something, you
And
start
he's
having
right
actual
now,
memories.
like, I mean, he's very aware, like, I know you're coming home every day, He
Right?
started
Yeah.
understanding about a year ago, or that, or to call me. But I mean, it's just like my parents had to do the same thing with me when they were in the military. I remember vividly, I had to grow up with my grandma. Like,
Right.
that's what we did. It was the
Mm.
community. So if it ever comes where you need to better yourself, and like that's just my job, that's what that it takes. It literally takes a village. And
And
I'm just
I think that's been lost a little bit too.
it
In
has
today's
it
culture.
really has.
So
And it's I'm just I've empathized, you know and I always just question, like, what why did I was I able to be put in the situation, like, it's just that. And I always want to make sure that, like, I'm extending that gratitude, extending that intentionality with like the things that I do in my career, how I raise my kid, how I coach the kids in here. Because like I had a coach that specifically told me, he was like, you cannot talk to everybody the same way. And I was like, you're right. And and then it really made me feel bad. Like even looking at film, I'll still kind of like cringe. I'm like, oh, I know I shouldn't have acted like that. And hopefully, we all just are able to pass. Like I don't know what type of person I was, but at the end of the day, like I know I meant well, but it's just like how you kind of go about things.
yeah.
And then just and just doing a lot of reflecting. I think that like we too bad say like, oh, just move on to the next play. Yes. However,
However,
it's also
comma.
yeah, however, it's supposed to be, you're supposed to learn from those things. And I just definitely, maybe not like right in the moment, not having to conquer it, but definitely conquering it at some point. Like whether that's the hard thing about like watching film, or you messed up and you're gonna have to do that in college, that kind of stuff.
For
I
sure.
mean, our coach at Utah, my second year, she literally didn't say a word to us until she was able to watch the film. And she was like, I never wanted to say anything that I can't take back. And I always think about that, now.
No,
I
that's
never
good.
want to say anything that I can't take back. So
Right.
some people, want to talk, let's figure it out right now, or, let's address things right now. But sometimes you have to look back. But each situation, like we said before, it just depends on the
It
situation.
depends.
Sometimes
It depends on the
there's a
situation. It
time and
depends on
place
the
for.
person. You right. You can't talk to everybody the same way because I have two little boys and they have two
Uh,
different personalities. And I discipline one where I can look at one of them and they cry, and the other one I have to kind of him
yeah.
up. They just two different people, and that's just in coaching as well. And I think the coaches that do well and do great at coaching, they have great self-awareness, and so then they know how to approach different kids, and how
Right.
to know like what to say to that kid, what they can't say to that kid, what will you might can scream at me, but if you scream at that person, they might just fold. And so it's just knowing that, and I think those are the ones that are good, that they can be in tune and
Right.
know and pay
And now
attention.
that like makes me want to circle back a little bit just to what you said about like the business. Like they have to basically like, how am I gonna get all y'all to work together like
That
in the
part.
best way? Like, that's the strategy. Like,
Yep.
and I always tell the kids now that come in here, I'm like, look, this is the skill. You don't do this in really much in college. Like it's really the drills, how to play together, situations, like what meshes. Like this is
Yep.
where you're gonna get all the skill work. You're never gonna go pop 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 doing my. You're never gonna
Never.
do. Never gonna do that. But I expect you to know how to do it coming in here because that's the game time. Like, okay, I gotta get a loose ball maybe, but that's like them strategizing. Like that's a coach strategizing how to play. And now you have to learn also be able to play with others. Like that's the piece. Like that's the both sides of
Yeah, that's the both
the
end because I tell my niece, I'm like, growing up, basketball's easy. You can go play that by yourself all day long, every day. Nobody had to go out there with me. But what I struggle with in college and what I see, I guess some coaches, they don't really emphasize on is, yes, we can come out here and dribble 10 times before we get to the 3-point line. That is not going to help you in college anyway.
Right.
So I said, but me going out, I got better. Like, you're going to get better doing skill drills. You're going to get better at dribbling the basketball. That just comes with the repetition that you're putting in. But when you get to college and I had to get open without the ball in my hands, then we have issues because I never had to. I've always gotten open with the ball in my hands. And so now I have to get open by setting the screen or going across the screen, and nobody talks about that. Nobody does that. Nobody talks about that. And I'm just like,
yeah,
that's what you got to do in college. Because unless you're the point guard, you're going to score more without the ball in your hands in a sense of like getting open. And so I was like, that's the one thing that is never talked about, obviously, because you're just out there shooting, dribbling, blah, 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 trying to get better as an individual. When you get in there, you got 5 other people you got to be playing. And we play motion offense, which is hard in general anyway. Yeah. Motion offense, if you want to score, you better get open off a screen. Or you better keep moving and you better hope for the assists. Yeah. But it's just those things that, like, yes, you can come in here and get better and score. I mean, get on a machine gun. All that's good to get reps, to get better, to be consistent at your shot. But at the same time, when you get to college, you're not going to be dribbling like you think you're going to be dribbling when you're doing these individual things. Right. That's not, even in individuals in college, we never did that many moves. Yeah. Never.
In a crossover finish.
And I'm in Aggie land, and I didn't see some of them go do practice. They ain't doing all that dribbling,
right?
And then the SEC, like, nobody's doing that kind of stuff. If you want, I told somebody,
it's always just like what we see, like what we think others are doing, and I mean, and now with like the very big influence of like social media is like, you start to get into like, oh, this is what I should be doing, or this and such is not doing that, and this is what I should be doing, and
it's so hard to tell you, like, bro.
And it's so hard to tell like what's what, and I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's always just kind of be there. We have to work with it, but I mean, I also feel like we don't use it enough as a platform, which is what you're doing here now. Of like, let's talk about like life outside of athletics, because half the time people don't understand, like, we don't even know what to do with our money. And I was one of those.
That part.
I was one of those we don't know what to do, that we don't know what to do with the money. Now, I was one of those that we were just getting free money to be on campus, no meal plan. I was able to choose like, oh, I don't want meal plans, I want more money and so forth. And boom, I'm blowing through it. And I could have definitely walked away with a whole bunch more had I been told to do that. Yeah, or had I been guided a little bit more. But that was also like, hey, you're a grown adult. Like, y'all, here's your money.
You gotta make those decisions. Yeah, nobody's here to tell you what not to buy, what to buy. And I thought,
like, bit me back.
Yeah, we had like a similar situation. Like, we had like, you can go into the cafeteria, or you can use your money and spend it at Chick-fil-A or whatever. But as soon as the money is over, it's out for the semester. Like, you're gonna be in the cafeteria regardless.
That's it.
So yeah, it's even with an accounting degree. Even I tell people all the time, I have an accounting degree, but having an accounting degree, they still don't teach you financial literacy. That's something that you have to go do and figure out on your own. Mm-hmm. It's just, again, majority of the people, you're gonna have to find something to do outside of your sport, and it's sometimes it's tough. I know it's a tough pill to swallow for some people, and I had a conversation with somebody else. I was like, it comes down to an identity issue. You don't think you can do nothing else, and that's where that's the problem. You just don't think you can do anything else, and you just never explored it because you've been so consumed
Yeah.
with just
And it's hard.
sport.
And it's hard to be like, to want to do things outside of like your main focus.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm too tired. Oh, I'm this, I'm that. And I mean, and I always tell like my patients now, like, how long have we been doing something? Like, it's not going to just flip a switch. Like, we have to build certain habits. We have to do or notice certain things within our routine to create a habit. But that being our only routine. It's like, what else? And so I will even say like I've been done for since 2019, and I'm still like I had to go to I went through all the possible school I could possibly go to until
Yeah.
now. Like, and I had to go to something very specific, but that was because I felt like I so much needed order. And like and I never really got to that's all that we do with athletics is it's order. So me going to school for something specific, I mean, I could have been done with my master's and had no debt, like no student loans, no nothing. But because I just couldn't, there was no real direction because I never truly explored like what life was outside of basketball. So I was
Mm-hmm.
still very heavily invested into it.
Yeah.
Like I still didn't know.
Right.
And I still don't know. I mean, I know that now, okay, I like to paint, but
There you go.
that's about as far as I've gotten. I'm not great, but that's as far as I've gotten in maybe 3 years. But that's just I like to write. I haven't always been like a big reader,
Yeah.
but like I listen to podcasts, or I'm trying to find podcasts that, work on I try to find podcasts that like or not podcast, I'm sorry. I try to find like oh yeah, podcasts that interest me in different ways, or like true crime, or I like to listen to this. But that is just like it's a working process, and it's like as
Mm-hmm.
long as you're working towards that, we start to find little things that we like. But I think it's also like kind of understanding that I like order, and I had to be okay with that. Like I just tried to do like the little free like. Oh, let me just do what I do and
Right.
figure
No,
out.
it's okay to like order.
And that may work for some people, but for me,
Right.
it's like I discovered that I always kind of needed that order. So yes,
Mm-hmm.
going to school for chiropractic is very specific, but now I also have that flexibility to go back and do like maybe some type of public health research because that's what I have my master's in. So, but I gave myself that option by finishing what I started. And I was like, still through, like I started it even though I was playing basketball, but I had to finish that. I couldn't just stop it because I was done. And I think like we always think about like the end goal of, okay, I get my 4 years and then what? And maybe it's like going into something if that you're able to. But I very much like I just it's always the emphasis on like it's a journey. And
No, for sure.
basketball was like a chunk of our lives. That was what we consumed ourselves in. But yes, we are capable of having conversations with people. We're capable of knowing what the body does. Like we don't do enough of promoting those type of majors because I have a lot of credibility. I put my body through it. I know what like if I
That
wanted to
part.
be a coach, if I wanted to be a coach, like I know what it's like to when you're on your last rep, like, and that you can push through. Cause I've done that before. I put my body through that before.
Yep.
But we always say like, oh, the easy stuff of like, oh, go to be a business major. And not, like I said, it all
No
depends on
shade.
like what you want. No shade at all. Like, cause I mean, I say like everybody's great in their own way. Like I'm not
Yeah.
an electrician. That to me is science. Like, yeah, people are like, oh, you know how to move or you know how to you pop back. So and we do a lot more than that. But it's like, yeah, but I don't know how to fix a car. Like, that to
Right.
me is
Right.
like
Right.
that is the stuff that we don't emphasize enough of like how you're good with your hands, you're good how to how to talk to people, how to conduct things, like, but we don't emphasize that enough with like athletes to highlight our strengths
Right.
outside of like your physical capabilities. Yeah, I know you can run, I know you can do all that, but like you
What else?
also are smart up here because I can show
Smart.
you a player the things that you have to study, but we don't apply that into like academia enough.
No, for sure, and I think that's good. But I go to the chiropractor.
You
I believe in the chiropractor. I actually
do.
took my I didn't know. So I went through both pregnancies. I went throughout to the chiropractor, and then I didn't know. Well, I did. I took the first one. I didn't take him right away because I guess I didn't know a little bit
Yeah.
how early you could take a kid,
Yeah.
but he had like colic, and so
Uh-huh.
a little bit of colic, and then some acid reflux. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, bro, I took him to the chiropractor. He was, hey, dude was fine after like visit number 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And so then the second baby, as soon as we left the hospital, we went straight to the chiropractor. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, were you taking your kid to the chiropractor? I was like, y'all, they don't adjust babies. Like,
Yeah.
they adjust big
Yeah.
people.
Not like, yeah. Well,
They literally just rub their little vertebrae on their back and like, that's it.
and
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
And that was like, it was very like, and I'm glad that you kind of mentioned that too, because I feel like, we get a lot of shade just in general
Yeah.
with like, so we get a lot of shade of like, oh, don't let them adjust your neck and, oh, this got injuries. And now everybody's not great. I don't let everybody touch me either. And I'm quick to tell them, like, I do this every day. I get it, but it's like that word of mouth is the most important because now, I don't know if like anybody had really saw, but now they're allowing like chiropractors at the Olympics. So like, just really preaching that like, just the knowledge about how our bodies can really, fix themselves in a sense. Not not fix, but heal themselves.
Heal themselves. No, for sure. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I was at a Rosti. When I decided I was going to school, I took there was a doctor there that worked for the Cowboys and for North Texas Athletics. And he had a conversation and he was like, look, I'm gonna tell you this because like, just to be completely upfront. And I was like, yeah, I appreciate that. And he was like, look, if you're basically a guest to the athletic trainer. When you go to these high level places, you're a guest. I was like, oh, okay. He's like, you don't get holidays. You don't get, you have to travel, you have to conduct yourself. And in my mind, I was like, oh, it's not, I mean, I've had to do that before. Like I played 5 years of college basketball. That's nothing. But
yeah.
when I had to also consider like that I really did this because I want to be able to close my laptop, close the door, and that work be work, and that I can be, this present person. And so I was like, I thought, going in, I wanted to be a sports chiropractor, and not that I don't want to, but or I thought I wanted to do prenatal and pediatrics until I realized that people don't trust you with your kid, just like I don't trust a lot of people with my kid, outside. He's quick to ask to go to his own chiropractor, even though I'm very capable. So he'll be, but go to her. Yeah, he's like, nope, but I want to crack your back. And I'm like, I'm the professional. And so, but yeah, it just kind of goes to say like, I'm trying to definitely work on that piece of like, just advocating for chiropractic in just life. I mean, it's not for everybody. Everything's not for everybody, but it definitely can help. And I mean, I one day just I'll probably want to see like some high level athletes on my own, but not like, especially since I think it's just that I don't want to be, not that I don't want to be told what to do, but I think I want to just have it to where like, I think I give my patients, like, I give them a lot of autonomy to kind of like, look, this is what my suggestion is. This is what I'm going to give to you. And, this is what we're going to work on. You tell me what you're willing to work with. And I think that, and I know that from like an athletic standpoint of I spend a lot of time in the training room. I'm not doing this outside of here. Like I'm not going to do no rehab outside of here. And there's like a line of like, yes, there are things that you should do and, and so forth. But it's like, I definitely try to talk to my patients as like, look, this is how we're going to treat it. Especially when I see young athletes, like, I know you're not going to do this when you leave here and you don't want to know why, because I didn't. And that's just like, and they're like, oh, and they got the parents laughing, the kids are laughing. And I'm like, I'm just being honest. And I know what it's like. And, if you have any questions about, and I always say like, if you have any questions about like anything that I can answer, or, I always try to just put that out there, like just use use me as a resource if like you have to with certain things going through the process. And I think like I'm constantly always talking about that. Or they'll ask me like, oh, you look strong, and did you play sports? You have a very like, the way you carry yourself. And I'm like, yeah, I played a little bit, and but I'd
Yeah.
never like to kind of go in there and I'm just like rawing down. But I mean, if it kind of is also a conversation starter, I'll be like, oh, I used to play a little bit too, and then they'll kind of like loosen up and kind of get to talking. But yeah, a lot of that is like understanding, being able to put myself in like the shoes of the athlete, my
Yeah.
patients,
No, for
and now
sure.
that I'm a provider. So I definitely have been using that like little bit of that connection to talk about that.
No, for sure. But I go to the chiropractor. Listen, I had a back injury. And the only reason why I had started going to the chiropractor, and after this we can wrap it up. But I had like a back injury doing some type of Olympic
Yeah.
lift, I'm sure, doing training, and it was the worst pain. And they was sent me to physical therapy.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, bro, this ain't getting it done quick enough.
Yeah.
And I feel like physical therapy, yes, it's the long game. So I was like, bro, I'm in pain. Like, I need some relief now. And so I went to the
Yeah.
chiropractor. He cracked whatever he did. I think my pelvic was a little tilted.
Yeah.
And it was fine. And then like he showed me like some stretches and some exercises just in case, like if we were on the road and it started hurting or something that I could do to kind of get it back in place. But after that, I was like, oh no, I'm going to the chiropractor all the time. So, and my boys go every week. And they're like,
Okay.
well, every week. I say, well, not. So I said, you'll know if you go into a good chiropractor because every time we go, he doesn't, if their neck don't need to be adjusted, he doesn't adjust it. So he's
Right.
not just going in there crack just so he can crack. He actually will feel, he's like, oh, their neck's fine today. I'm not going to touch that.
Yeah.
And then their back and their hips and their boys, they're rough. And so I'm like, so he doesn't adjust them in every spot every time if they don't need
Right.
it. And
Yeah.
and I feel like honestly, and people probably be like, oh, that's not true, but like they don't, and of course after I said this, they probably won't get sick, but they don't get sick that often.
Right.
Either. And then and they just not, they haven't been just like sick kids that I feel like an ear infection. So my firstborn, he got one ear infection the first time ever in his life, like last year.
Oh wow.
And I didn't know what was wrong with him. And it was like, because he's never had it. And he's like, my ears are, and I thought we went to the ER. Like, it was the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I was just like, he was like excruciating pain. I'm like, did you get something stuck in your ear? Like, what's going on? But he had a bad ear infection. He never experienced an ear infection before. Because we would always go to the chiropractor. He would always rub his little, they told me the little area back there to rub. And so the second kid, he did have like, because his ears are, he just, everything is just little on him. But he did have like a couple back and forth. I was like, well, bro, we're not getting tubes. So I told the chiropractor, I was like, well, you're going to have to focus on those ears more because they trying to think like if you get another ear infection, they're trying to get tubes or whatever. And so we've been fine. So by going to the chiropractor and doing that. And so he's not had to get tubes. I was like, we're not getting tubes. It's just, it is not needed because it's just, his ears, the tubes are just little. And when you get sick, it gets congestion. And that's why ear infection happens. And I'm just
This more like you mentioned, like it's more of like that, just being the proactive than reactive. And every day we could trip over a curb. Like patients will come in like, oh, I'm just in so much pain, or like and I'm like, look, we could trip over a curb and something kind of just, and that's just how it goes. Perfect timing, perfect. It's just everything lined up. But I definitely, like I said, definitely appreciate you talking about like the pediatric part of it, because it is important, like for how our kids grow up and how our kids are going through, like how they're going through sports. Like, basically it's how our body's communicating to our brain. And if there's the interruptions,
if there's an interrupt, that's what he told. That's what he's like.
So,
that spine or something like that.
Like, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, I mean, my chiropractor or Grace chiropractor, she's just, I mean, we went for a diaper rash, and I knew that, like, I was taking him to his pediatrician, and they kept treating the rash, and I was like, look, I know, and I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job. I was like, but I know it's what's coming out of him. It's not the rash itself. Took him to the chiropractor. She was the one that she does a lot of like functional nutrition, functional medicine. She did a GI map for him. He had like a bacteria remnants of a bacteria from when he had hand, foot, mouth. But it's like, why can't I get those answers. You got to kind of go back and forth, but it's because a lot
Yeah.
of times you don't
A lot
know
of those
that.
chiropractors are becoming functional medicine doctors. That
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I am not one of those
I
because
got
I that is a
you. Is that
lot of
another? Is that like
uh,
another like part of
no, not
school?
necessarily, but it's like, you can have definitely places where you can like kind of focus on. Like for me, I like to focus a lot on like definitely the neuromusculoskeletal, but like that muscular component to like range of motion, proprioceptive, which is that and neuromuscular facilitation. So how does like that contracting, relaxing piece of muscles then relate to tendons, then relate to ligaments, then relate to joint motion? I mean, it's not like, and I have like, I do know like some of my colleagues now, I can say that colleagues now that are, into functional medicine, and they're continuing to do like, different types of diplomates or specialties where they can do like they can read for like cardiac films and stuff like that. So there's definitely a lot of growth like where you can go. But when I was at the VA doing my internship, it was really like, okay, sometimes a lot of things are more simple than we think they are, outside of when things have been ruled out. So I like to be on the ruled out side of stuff where let's take it back to like the basic of this is not moving because it could be this, and it kind of goes back into that body mapping. But I mean,
Gotcha.
we don't have enough people to talk about it. So it definitely is just like,
No, that's,
that's what I just try to do. Like when we're, here training, or just, it's just really just painting that picture for patients.
no. I think it's important, and I think if it was in, so I think at Arkansas State, like we would have him. He would come in. Actually, he would go for football. He would address people before
Mhm.
like football games and stuff. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of that stuff to prevent. I think also to prevent injury in the weight room it
Yeah.
would benefit, because sometimes you get kids in there that has never done an Olympic lift before in their life, and then they going in
Yeah.
there. The strength
That's
coach
really,
is good, but like at the same time, if the person ain't coordinated, they gonna pull something, put something like, and it's,
Mhm.
I feel like
And
it's
then we don't get to
important.
watch that enough. Like,
Right.
I mean, I definitely noticed, like, I mean, I probably count on one hand how many times that I have touched the weight room in high school, but then in college, like, if you're lifting in a big group, unless you kind of are paying attention to the detail, you're probably going to be lifting wrong. And then now you're not being watched, and now something hurts, and now you're in the training room, and that creates that domino effect. And
Yep.
now you finish school, and now you're just left with back pain
That
after.
they said lower back pain. Like, oh
Yeah, exactly. So then it's like now you're
worst.
trying to figure out what happened, and you can't even trace it back to why. So
No.
that's the part where I come in. I'm like, okay, we ruled out all the crazy stuff for real. Like now let's start to think about how to retrain our body properly.
Yeah.
And that's literally all we can do. Like,
That's it.
and it takes a process.
Yeah. So, last thing before we close up, is there anything that you wish the former athlete going professional, when they hear this podcast, what is one thing that you hope they get from listening to your story today?
I hope that it comes off as very genuine, um, and that like I'm an intentional person, and that just based off of my perspective is where like I'm speaking from, and and to know that like regardless of where you are and what you've done, and for the things that you didn't do, that like at the end of the day, like we did it,
Yep.
um however we got there, however you started, however it finished, like that's something that you went through, and that's like unique to us and our experiences. And hopefully like we get comfortable having the hard conversations of like having a, whether that's look back at what you didn't do right, what you could have done better, versus thinking sometimes too like as everything as an attack. And I used to do that a lot, like think about less of what was done to us and what we got out of it. Like,
There you go.
I mean,
That's
good or bad, like I said, easier said than done. But
mm-hmm.
I mean, just kind of like finding that little bit of light in the experience that a lot of people didn't get to have. But yeah, that it just comes off as genuine. I mean, I definitely like that's just something that's super important to me. And I do not play about my character, and how people perceive me, and the things that come out of my mouth are very intentional. So I hope that that's something that's that's taken away.
All right. Well, it was been good. A good conversation. Thanks for coming on More Than 94. And that is game.
It's too easy. You lay up a finger on it. It's more than 94. It is more than 94. This is more than 94.